Hey guys, this is Anthony from anthonymorganti.com, and this is part 3 of Learn Lightroom 5. In part 1, we jumped right into the develop module and we developed this picture. And in doing so, we used a lot of the controls over here in these panels to bring the picture to this point. If you look, this is where we started and this is where we ended up. In part 2, we did a lot of these tools up here we introduced, and I showed you how to use them. Now in part 3, we're going to develop another photograph, this one here, and we're going to go from the beginning, show you my workflow right to the end. And in this photograph, we'll be using again a lot of these controls here in this panel and a lot of the tools. So let's just get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close these panels down just to make the photograph larger to give you so you could see it a little better. The first thing I do in my workflow when I'm presented with a raw file that I'm going to process is I straighten the horizon if it needs to be. In this photograph it's pretty straight. I'm just going to mention it real quick. You click on this first tool right here and you could crop the photograph or click on this angle and you could straighten the horizon. And what you would do is if you had a strong vertical, or in this case the horizon's a strong horizontal, you would just draw a line right across that horizontal. And if the photograph needs to be straightened, it'll automatically straighten the photograph. In Lightroom 5 though, they also, in the lens corrections here, you could do it automatically. You just hit this auto key. The other thing I actually do is I come into this lens corrections area and I hit the auto to see if it needs to be straightened, and I click these two boxes, enable profile corrections, and that's any errors or aberrations in the lens I used, Lightroom will correct for it. So if there's pincushion distortion or barrel distortion, Lightroom will actually correct any errors. Remove chromatic aberration, you click. This photograph won't probably have any, but typically that's if you have like a strong vertical, like a tree limb or a flagpole or something, in a darker picture, right around the fringes you'll get a purple or a green line. And if you click remove chromatic aberration, that usually will diminish that line, maybe get rid of it totally. So that's the first thing I do. I go into in Lightroom 5, I'll go into lens corrections, hit auto, it'll straighten the picture, and I click these two boxes. Next thing I do, I go up here to the basic panel and I start doing my controls here. In this photograph, the color balance, color temperature is fine, and the tint is fine. If I wanted to mess around with it, I could. Right here where it says as shot, if you click on there, hopefully you shot in a raw file. You'll have all these different choices. If you don't shoot raw, I strongly suggest you do. The reason being, there's a lot more control for you to post-process a photograph when you start out as a raw file. And the complaint I hear from people why they don't shoot raw is they say, well, it doesn't look good. Like, you know, it's all washed out all the time. The JPEGs look better. And I go, well, the reason why the JPEGs look better is because your camera actually processed the raw file into a JPEG for you. And that's the idea here. We don't want the camera to do it for you. You want to do it yourself because you have more control over it. So shoot raw, go into Lightroom, and you could adjust the photograph the way you want it to look. Now, as I started to talk about, as far as this white balance is concerned, you could change it if you wanted to. There's auto. If you go to daylight, it's going to make it, probably pretty much the same. Go to cloudy, it'll make it warmer. Shade will make it even warmer. If you wanted to, get that effect, you could do that. Tungsten's going to bring it really cold. Fluorescent's going to be kind of a weird, cold look. Flash should be pretty much the way it was. So I'm just going to leave it as shot because I was happy with the color balance to begin with. So I'm not going to do anything with the tint. The exposure is fine. If the picture was too dark or too light, I could adjust the exposure with this slider. Contrast I will do, but I don't do that first. What I do first is the highlights and the shadows. And as I go over these sliders here, if you look up in the histogram, it will actually show the part of the histogram I'm going to affect. So the highlights are not the whitest whites, but the next one down. The shadows aren't the blackest blacks, but they're the next one up. Whereas the whites are the whitest white and the blacks are the blackest black. So what we're going to do is, what I do with a landscape photo, I mentioned this in part 1, is I go to the highlights and I bring them all the way down. Minus 100. The shadows I bring all the way up. Plus 100. It pretty much flattened the picture out, but it brought some detail into the shadows and some detail in the highlights. The next thing I do, if I'm going to add a graduated filter, I do it next. And in this photograph, we have this expansive sky here. So I'm going to add the graduated filter. And that's the fourth one from the left right here. You click on that, you'll see this panel opens up. This is all the controls for the graduated filter that we're going to be adding. What you do first is if you hold the Alt key and look right here where it says Effect. If you hold the Alt key and see it says Reset, click on that and you'll see all those sliders got zeroed out. What I want this graduated filter to do, I want to cool the sky off. I'd like it more blue. So I'll take the color temperature and I'm going to bring it down a little. Now you won't see anything happen yet because I didn't apply the graduated filter. In the tint, I'll move it to the right towards magenta a little bit. Now you come up here where you want to apply the graduated filter, anywhere down a little bit. You know, it doesn't really matter. And you just click down and drag down. Now you see how it's sliding all around like that? In this case, I'd like it to be perfectly straight. So what a little trick you could do is hold the Shift key in when you do this. It'll force it to stay perfectly horizontal. So just drag it down. I'm going to drag it down to about there. And you can see how it's more intense up here, less intense down here. Hence, it's a graduated filter. The other thing, looking at it now, I'd like to bring the exposure down a little bit. Now this is just affecting the graduated filter. The exposure won't be affecting anything down here. So I just gonna see if I brought it way down. See how dark it gets. I just want to bring it down just a little bit. There. I think I'm going to bring the temperature, make it just a touch colder too. Okay, I'm happy with that. So we click close. The graduated filter is done. Now the next thing I do then is I adjust my whites and blacks. And the way these are adjusted is if you hold the Alt or Option key down on your keyboard and you click on it, you'll see when you click on the white slider, the screen goes totally black. What you do now is you keep holding the Alt or Option key and you bring this slider to the right, and you keep bringing it to the right until you see see that come through. Back it off till you just start to see something like there. That's adjusted. Now the blacks, you do the opposite. You hold the Alt or Option key down, and when you click on it, the screen turns white, but you move to the left. And you bring it, now see we're starting to see some black come in. I usually bring this one a little further. You could always go back and adjust it. Everything you do in Lightroom is non-destructive. As a matter of fact, let me show you something here. It's keeping track of our history here. See, I just did the black clipping. Right before that I did the white clipping. Then I did some of this graduated filter stuff. Let's say I wanted to go back right before I added the graduated filter. All I do is click there. It brings us back to that point. So you don't worry about making a mistake. Nothing is ever permanent. So we're going to go back to where we were. So, all right. Now, okay, we did the graduated filter and we adjusted our white and blacks. The next thing I do is I'll go up here to contrast, which I skipped earlier, and I'll just see if maybe add a touch of contrast. You can see if you add a lot, it gets really crazy looking. If you bring it, it gets really soft. There might be instances where you want the contrast to be a little soft, but in this case, no. I'm just going to bring it up a little. I'm not going to go too crazy with that. The clarity, a lot of people call it, sharpness, but technically isn't really sharpening your picture. It's making the edges between something that's bright and something that's dark a little more bright, a little more dark as they join each other. So if you bring clarity up really high, sometimes you get noise. You'll get some luminance noise in the photograph, and you want to avoid that. In portraits, you really don't want clarity at all. It really messes with the skin. In this photograph, I'd like the sand to be just a tiny bit more, clear. So I'll adjust the clarity around 29 is fine. Vibrance brings every color in the photograph that isn't saturated. It adds a little more saturation to those colors. Usually I'll bring it up a little bit. So if you get something that's saturated very blue, it's not going to affect it as much as something that's a lighter blue. Now, conversely, saturation will increase the saturation of every color in the photograph. And I really don't mess with saturation much, and I'm not going to in this photograph. I'm just going to leave it alone. So I'm pretty much done with this basic panel. I might come back once I do some other adjustments. I might decide that I want to do something else. So we'll close that down. The tone curve is just a typical tone curve, and you could a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do it to increase contrast. And to increase contrast, you make what they call the S-curve. So you go down about a third way up and you pull down on it slightly. Then you go about a third way down from the top and you push up slightly. And it tends to increase the contrast of the photograph. There's also like a preset here. You could go to medium contrast. You'll see how it did it for me. Strong contrast, it's going to make it even more pronounced. It's to your own taste. So I'm going to leave it right there. The next thing I do is this slider is the Use Saturation and Luminance slider. I usually work on it right in the HSL tab. There's the color tab here. And if you were going to do a black and white photograph, you'd click there and it would make a black and white photograph, and you could do some adjustments to a black and white photograph. In part 4 of Learn Lightroom 5, I'm going to process a black and white photograph, and I'll show you how to do that. But in here we're doing color. So as I mentioned, I usually do it in this HSL tab. I usually don't do anything with the U slider at all. I like the color. If it's blue, I want it to be blue. If it's purple, I want it to be purple. I'm not going to adjust those sliders at all. But I will go into the saturation slider. And I want the blue a little more blue, and I'd like the sand a little more yellow. So what we're going to do is we go to the blue slider, and we just increase that a little. You don't see it much, but it's there. In the yellow now, I want the yellow. You could bring it like that or like that. See how it took the saturation right out of the sand, but I want it a little more. Then I go to the luminance. Well, I'm going to do the orange too for the sand. I think that'll help the sand a little bit. Yep. I go to the luminance panel here, and you could make now, well, let's go with the blue. I can make the blue brighter, or I can make it darker. So I'm going to make it a little darker. Now, one thing I probably mentioned before, but I'll mention it again. If you have a tab, you want to put this slider right back in the middle where it was, just double click on it, and it goes back to where it started. Anyways, I'm going to bring that down a little bit, make the blue a little darker. The yellow I want a little brighter, I think, and the orange, I think I want that a little brighter too, but not that much. I don't want it to glow. Okay, that's good there. You could do the exact same thing in the middle tab in the color slider. As you could see, we had 3 tabs under the HSL tab. We had hue, saturation, luminance, and we adjusted each color for each item. In the color, it's kind of sideways. You pick the color, and then you could adjust the hue, saturation, and luminance. If you prefer to do it that way, you're doing the exact same thing. As you can see in the blue, it adjusted the sliders +19, -19, exactly like I did did here. So it's the same exact thing, plus 19 minus 17, I should say. And you can see it's minus 17 in luminance for the blue, plus 19 for the blue in saturation. So, do whichever one you're more comfortable with. So I'm done with that. Split toning I'm not going to need on this one. What you would do here is you could actually adjust the hue separately in the highlights as opposed to the shadows. So I'm not going to be doing any of that now. And increase saturation in that part. So if you want something's colorful in the highlights and you want it to stand out, you would do it here. Or conversely, if something's colorful in the shadows and you want it to stand out, you would do it here. Next thing I do is I go into the detail panel, and this is where you could add some sharpening and the noise reduction. What you're going to do here is, as we zoom in, you could see, I don't know if you could see it, what I should do is I probably should go to 4:1 even. Okay, yeah, there you could see it. Close that down. You can see the little grain looking noise in there, and the noise reduction, if you as you move that up, you'll see eventually it'll smooth it out. See how it's blurred it out? If you don't want to go too high because it's going to make your picture blurry, so there's got to be a happy compromise. And typically what I'll do is, let me show you, is let me go to part of the photograph here where we could get more detail. I have it at 4:1 so it's not moving too quick. Alright, here. Now you can see I got this a lifeguard tower, and I usually adjust the sharpening first. Usually, to give you an idea, usually around 70 to 80 is pretty decent. So if you just want a quick and dirty idea, put it right to 70. Now you can see it increased the noise, but we're going to take care of that in a minute. The radius, detail, and masking, most of that I leave alone. There are some instances though where I will change those. And in a future episode of Learn Lightroom 5, which I believe it's going to be in the 5th episode, I'm actually going to go, all we're going to do is the detail slider. I'm going to explain all of this and how it affects different types of pictures and what you should do. But right now, if you want to just throw that on 70 and leave it there, that's fine. Noise reduction, quick and dirty way, is put it around between 40 and 50. Now you can see how it significantly reduced the noise that was in the photograph. Now we're at 4:1. A lot of times, editors and that, they look at the photograph at 1:1 to see if there's any noise. Now you can see it's pretty good. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll close out this detail panel. Close out this panel. Okay. Now, the next thing I do is, after I do the detail panel, I would go in, and if I would double check for chromatic aberration problems or anything like that. And in this photograph, like I said, there really isn't anything to worry about. So you would do that under this color tab, and you could adjust these sliders to remove any of the purple or green shadow that you might be having along any of the verticals. But we don't have to worry about that in this photograph. Excuse me. Next thing I do is I jump down to camera calibration. Again, this is where if you're shooting in RAW, you'll have a lot more to choose from here. If you're shooting if you're developing a JPEG, you won't have anything. I think you're stuck with what you have. So what I do is I just see what the photograph looks like under these different things. It started out in Adobe Standard. We'll do camera landscape, and you'll see the photograph will change considerably. I kind of like that, actually, the way it did it there. Camera neutral is going to be more flat. Portrait, obviously this isn't a portrait, but it's not too bad. Camera standard will be pretty much the way it was. Camera vivid, I kind of like that one too. So I like landscape, and I liked vivid. Yeah, pretty close. I think I'll just leave it on camera landscape, so I like that. The next thing I'll do is I just go to effects, and I like to add a vignette. The vignette draws the person looking at the photograph, it draws their attention towards the center. So you just go right here, post-crop vignetting under the effects panel, and there's the amount. If you go to the right, you'll get a white vignette. If you go to the left, you get a black vignette. I just do it very, very slightly to the left. That's even too much right there, like that. Even that might be a little too much. You could also just type in, see how it's -9? I could just type in -5 and hit enter. That's good. I like that. And that is pretty much done. I consider this photograph done. Oh, you know what though? We're not actually. I should show you. There is some noise, like camera sensor dust in the photograph, and I'll show you how to get rid of that. What we're going to do is you go to 1:1 mode, and you can see this spot here. You go to right here, which is your spot removal tool. Put it on clone. To adjust the size of your brush, that makes it bigger. The left bracket key makes it smaller. The right bracket key makes it bigger. You're going to want it just bigger than the spot you're going to be getting rid of. And I noticed in Lightroom 5 it's a little more herky-jerky on my computer for some reason. It's not real smooth when I move it on with my Wacom tablet. Anyways, you just go over the spot and you paint over it, and it samples a spot that it thinks will remove it. You could go over it, see how it turns it into a hand, and you could move it around. And you could bring it to a sample it, I think right there, and then hit enter. And it's gone. You hit close, and that sensor dust spot is gone. That's it. That's my workflow, how I would process this photograph. Now in episode 4, I'm going to take a different photograph and we're going to process it into black and white. So be sure to check that out. That should be out in the next day or so. And again, this is Anthony from AnthonyMorganti.com, and I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope you subscribe, and if you like it, hit the like button. I really appreciate it. Thanks.